Welcome to the Southern Report once again. Thank you so much for giving me the privilege of your time. It is something that I don't take for granted, and I am very grateful for it. It's fantastic when you can bring back dear friends back to your program, which I'm going to do. There's been a couple of clues there with the books that I've already shown, and we will really get into that. But I just want to raise something, which is the American Gulag Chronicles book. You see in the show here, there's one here of the first one. There is now 3 in the series. Please go on to americangulagchronicles.com and please buy the books, because it is needed. Even though 1,600 people have been given a pardon, people are still struggling to get their lives back, find jobs and repair their lives after the disgraceful way that people have been treated for exercising their constitutional rights on January the 6th, 2021. Now, I've said the word constitutional rights, and I have a funny feeling that that may come up in conversation with my dear friend, Kevin Shipp. Kevin, what an absolute joy and it is to see you, my friend. And just for the record, for everyone who doesn't believe me, Kevin and I have met, and it's 5 years ago, nearly, which is rather shocking. And I do have a copy of this book, which he very, very kindly signed for me. And inside it says, "The Love of Freedom." So I'm very grateful. Kevin, it's lovely to see you. How are you?
Mark, my good friend, thanks for having me on. It's always good to see you.
No, not at all. Kevin, let's start with it. Let's just remind everyone where people can find your work. So this was your first book, and I also then brought up your second book. So and we'll get on to what is happening now. So where can people find your work at the moment?
The best place to go, especially for Twilight of the Shadow Government, is just Amazon.com. You can get it there. It was a bestseller. I don't know if it still is. I haven't checked recently, but it's been doing very well. By the grace of God. I mean, it's one of a kind. We got that out without the CIA stopping it. So it's done really well, and it's kind of a project I did for the Lord, because really I risked everything in doing it. But people need to know kind of the darkness that exists. It's in some of our intelligence circles, and it's been hidden for so many years. It's time for Americans, especially, to know, especially what the agency is and what it's been doing in secrecy and in the shadows. And so this book is the result of that.
Brilliant. And of course, and I remember 5 years ago, just to remind you, when we met at the Watchman conference in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I remember coming down to the hotel lobby and introducing myself to you. And then we had an amazing conversation. And then I became, we won't talk about it because it's a secret, but there was a specific role that you gave me around the dinner table. And that does create smiles and a bit of hilarity.
Oh, yeah, it was funny.
It was fun,
really fun.
and I give a shout out to my dear friends Audrey and Brian that were there as well. But one thing that really struck me in that conversation, and I know I have moved on since that in regard to research and what you look at, and around that table, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because it tied up with the documentary that came out at that time, when you said that Himmler's staff car was buried on a CIA base in America.
Well, there was a lot of things buried there, and that was one of 2 reasons why they went after me and literally tried to destroy me. And I was told that directly by a CIA Inspector General staffer who was ordered to do that. There were things buried on that base that the CIA did not want the Congress or Senate, especially the American people, to know about. A lot of skeletons and dirty deeds were buried there, and some of them were percolating up. It's like even Mother Nature wanted to spit them out. And so it was a very sensitive place, and there were a lot of skeletons buried there, and a lot of very strange, sometimes almost demonic activity, which I've discussed on other interviews that were going on there. So it was a horrible place. They'd done horrible things there going back 50 plus years, and it all had been buried there to be kept away from the American public. And of course, when the Senate Select Committees would come out, they'd send their young staffers and they'd take him out to lunch, pat him on the back, take him out, let him shoot a bunch of cool weapons, and they'd go home happy and wouldn't see or investigate. I think that's what the intelligence committees do many times. Anyway, but my family was poisoned on that base, and it was covered up. Our house was broken into. They painted a chemical on the ceiling. We found mycotoxins, which is a neurotoxin, leaking into the ceiling. And most people know that story. And that's when I decided I was a top performing agency officer. It was my career. It was my love. But when my family got deathly ill, almost terminally, and then the CIA covered it up, broke into the house, put us there intentionally, knowing the house was contaminated, then that was my line in the sand. As the saying goes, you can mess with a man, but you do not mess with his family. Mm. I had to make a prayerful decision to fight back with everything I had, but to do it prayerfully and to do it smart, because I had to be 2 steps ahead of them. I knew exactly what they were going to do before they did it, because obviously I was them, and eventually realized that the only thing that is going to bring justice is the truth and light, and for the truth to come out for people to see it. It's the only way, and so that's why I came out. And I'm called a whistleblower. Okay, whatever. That's not a title I chose for myself. I'm a constitutionalist who exposed some CIA criminal activity, and I did that because I think it's what I have been personally called to do, whether I like it or not. Anyway, that's how this all started, and then wound up in Twilight of the Shadow Government, which is one of its kind, humbly, because an agency officer has not done this before, and opened up a lot of these illegal criminal CIA operations that people need to know about.
And the reason why I'm referring to that, and because we're not talking about anything that is not out in the public domain already, because you talked about that. But I go back to Harry Truman. So Harry Truman then formed the CIA in 1947, I believe, if my history is correct. And then what was that statement? He then regretted that in a very short period of time, didn't he, Kevin? What was the statement he made?
Yes, within 2 years, the CIA had insulated itself into a para-government behind the president, without the president's knowledge, and engaging in multiple operations. It still is today, that not even the director of the CIA many times will know about, but it became a machine, an unstoppable secret machine that was outside of our Constitution. And Truman came out and wrote an op-ed saying there's something about the way the agency is functioning that's casting a bad light on our position of freedom, and I feel it needs to be corrected. He had already seen within 2 years the agency went rogue that fast. And since then, it has grown massively, which each progressive administration, until now it's a global juggernaut that functions many times without the knowledge of Congress and the president. And I talk about some of those operations in my book that the CIA has done behind Congress's back. So it is a monstrous organization. And as you know, and those who've read my book know, I'm calling for the CIA to be reformed, broken apart, its covert operational authority, of which it has stretched way beyond the limits of how it was described in the National Security Act of 1947. It has grossly abused that to the tune of the death of about 7 million innocent people in the coups and other things. And it's time for that organization to be broken apart, and the good parts kept, like the Directorate of Intelligence and Analysis and all that, is what Truman intended. 80% of the people that work with the agency are good, patriotic people. It's the upper 20%, even by Mike Pompeo's own admission and James Woolsey, former DCI, they do not believe in the U.S. Constitution. They believe in the CIA and its expansion, its protection and preservation at all costs. And I mean at all costs. My family was collateral damage, and they thought that was going to stop me. But sadly for them, that backfired, because now the entire world knows what they did to my wife and kids. So, but it is a monster that needs to be reformed. And it is so powerful that Congress won't do it, because they're either bound by a CIA secrecy agreement, or they're afraid that what the agency did to Frank Church and the Church Committee and MK Ultra, they're afraid that the CIA would do that to them, and they would, and ruin their careers. So someone has to speak out about this and demand. And I know Bobby Kennedy Jr. is a good friend of mine, and he's got his hands full with a lot of stuff right now. But he really was one of the ones that encouraged me to go forward and write this book, so people would understand what a monster this is. So something has to be done about it. But usually, someone has got to step out and take the risk first. Always in any sort of historical movement. And myself and some other very, very good whistleblowers, quote unquote, have come out and taken the risk to let people know what this organization really is and how we can reform it and get Congress to get off their duff and away from the lobbyists from the military industrial complex and Lockheed and others and do their job. And we vote them out. By if they don't do that, we vote them in for doing that. So that's where we're at.
You've covered so much ground here, because I was immediately, and thank you. We haven't had a conversation before. It's just, I just praise God. We have prayed. I praise God how these conversations go, because when you're talking about Truman, when you're talking about the establishment of the CIA, and the fact that, as you've said, it's about an intel, they were supposed to bring briefings to the president to say, well, this is what is going on here. This is what is going on here. So it's about intel to enable the president, the administration, to make the decisions that are important to the United States of America, and also, dare I say, to the rest of the world, and that actually, when you mention the Church Committee, and I'm immediately thinking Trilateral Commission here as well, Kevin, because let's just say it. Dear Pat Wood is the expert on that, writing the book with AC Saturn.
That's a real
Trilaterals
thing.
over Washington. The present Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, was a member of the Trilateral Commission from 2017 to 2022. It's on their website. Other people greater than me have said that, and include, it's out there, and these things need to be discussed. But Kevin, what did they do to church? What did they do to the Church Committee? Because at that time, that whole discussion of Project Mockingbird, if I'm right, what say you?
Yeah, there's a great book out there called The Last Honest Man that was just written about Frank Church. Frank Church was a good, honest man and a courageous man. And when he opened up the Church Committee, he was literally called by the director of the CIA and told, if you continue with this, we will destroy you. And they had the power to do that, and they'd used that power before. Well, he proceeded anyway and uncovered just the tip of the iceberg of MK Ultra and the horrific sexual abuse and torment and drug programs that they did in unwitting subjects. Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA was controlling the U.S. news media, especially, and planning stories and paying journalists. Just the tip of the assassination program, just the tip of those programs came out in the Church Committee, just the tip. And then they were nipped right in the bud as soon as Frank Church was able to bring out MK Ultra. The DCI, Richard Helms, who, by the description of his attorney's daughter, who I'm going to be in a documentary with, was a very evil man. As soon as MK Ultra was mentioned in the Church Committee, Helms ordered the destruction of 10,000 MK Ultra documents in the CIA. So we will never see those. And it's like the JFK assassination and Alan Dulles and his control of the Warren Commission. We will never see those documents. They were destroyed. So we all want more JFK files released. And I don't want to disillusion people, but we're never going to see the actual files because they no longer exist, just like with MK Ultra. So it's up to we, the people, to kind of take the puzzle pieces factually that we can find and put them together into as close a picture as we can as to what the reality is.
Could you define MK Ultra for me? I don't mean it as a stupid question. It's that we throw that term around, understandably, but do we really understand this?
Well, what we do understand is MK Ultra was a program to try to build a super soldier where you can break their mind apart and put it back together so that they'll go into battle and die without any fear or really any knowledge of what they're about to do. They're essentially their program. Also, they were trying to develop mules that would carry intelligence into foreign countries, and after it was delivered verbally, would completely forget what was planned in their mind And they wanted new enhanced interrogation procedures where they could take a person apart and get them to tell the truth. And they were willing to do anything to do it. LSD, mescaline. They did sexual torture. They did water torture. They did horrific things, sexual abuse to try to break the human mind apart. And Mark, that's just what we know. That's just what got out. And having been in the CIA, we're just seeing the tip of these things. But that's what MK Ultra was designed to do, and they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, backed away, and we now know about it, but it was shut down, and no one has heard anything about it since. Victor Marcetti, who wrote the book CIA and the Cult of Intelligence, in my opinion, one of the first true CIA whistleblowers and a courageous man. He stated that even though they claimed MK Ultra was shut down, it was still continuing during his time. I can tell you this: the CIA has no morals, it has no ethics, it functions under the power of secrecy for the perpetuation of its own programs. It will do anything that it thinks will work. And of course, you and I know, I am absolutely convinced that the agency had connections to Epstein's massive global network also. They will do anything they can for intelligence, expansion of the CIA and their view, and I underline that, their view of national security, which essentially is expansion of the CIA and its power against all enemies. Essentially, it helps to know that the CIA is a machine that functions. There are directors in the Directorate of Operations that are engaging in operations right now that not even the director knows about, because this machine has been functioning since it was been created unbridled, despite the creation of the intelligence committees, which are window dressing. And I talk about that on my program. I'm doing a program on Patreon now called CIA Masterclass, where I'm going through the entire structure of the agency, how it functions, how it got off track, exactly how it violates the Constitution. And that's going to be going on for about 6 months. So I get into this pretty much in detail, but it is a machine that was set up, has expanded globally, and functions regardless of who's in office. In the office of the presidency, it does not matter. That person is there for 48 years. The CIA, that mechanism, that machine stays there and will stay there and will be there regardless of who's in office or regardless of who claims they're going to reform it. I was hoping that this current administration would reform it. I no longer think that. I think that it's too much of a monster, and you have to really take a personal career risk to do anything about it. So sadly, I no longer think the CIA is going to be reformed, but I'm going to keep pressing, and I'm hoping American people especially will join me in demanding that.
And you don't think it's going to be reformed because, without sounding repetitive, you don't think, do you think people just go, it can't be done? Or what about courage? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but why don't you think specifically that will be taken head on?
I think you nailed it. Washington D.C. is a place where self-seeking, narcissistic cowards want to promote themselves. And if you want to challenge the CIA, for example, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, I sent them both my evidence of the break-ins and the poisons and the toxins, evidence in my house, and I got nothing back but silence. Nothing. They did not do a thing, because they're not going to challenge the CIA, even though they're supposed to be the CIA's oversight. Plus, there's a book out called, I have it here in my library, Eyes on Spies. And this lady has an intelligence background. She gets into the intel committees and says they only meet once a year, less than any other committee. And they're all concerned with one thing, and that's reelection. You're not going to get reelected if you dig down too deep in the CIA and find some of this stuff. So they just meet once a year for a show meeting, and that's it. So to answer your question, it won't be reformed unless the executive branch makes that a mandate, like Kennedy tried to do, and unless Congress joins in that mandate. Those are the two branches, the executive branch in terms of what I'm calling for a new National Security Act with a new definition of the CIA's authority from the White House. And then Congress has the power of the budget. I just did a program on CIA Masterclass on the CIA's secret budget. Congress can control the CIA's budget. Only problem is the CIA's budget has been made secret, and most congressmen can't even see it. So they've set this monster up in such a way that it's almost impenetrable, except by the voter, we the people. And we have to put pressure on these congressmen and senators, some of which are in the CIA's pocket, and let our congressman and senator know, listen, you start asking and demanding reform of the CIA, we're going to vote you out of office. I have reached the conclusion that's the only way reform is going to be. The operation in Venezuela, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but that was initiated and run by the CIA. They used plausible deniability, which I talk about in detail in my master class, to basically lie about the reason that they went into Venezuela. They went into Venezuela because Maduro was running fentanyl into the United States. He was running drugs into the United States. And he was committing weapons violations. Neither of those are true. There's no fentanyl coming into the United States from Venezuela, and the drugs that come through Venezuela do not come to the United States. They go to the Caribbean and Paris. But that's a typical CIA plausible deniability to go in and stage the coup that they did under a false pretext. That is actually standard operating procedure for the CIA. It's nothing new. They've always done it. They always will. That's the way the machine works. But there's a classic example of not CIA reform, but CIA expansion. Now we have the Directorate of Digital Innovation in the CIA, which should scare everybody, where they're now taking over AI. They've got 2,000 Silicon Valley companies that they have funded and now control. 300 of those Silicon Valley companies have classified CIA contracts, which means they signed CIA secrecy agreements. It means they're bound by the CIA. So the Director of Digital Innovation is now taking over the digital side of the American system, including the government system, which should scare everyone. So in terms of reform, this is a monster. It's a huge task, but the place is so dark, so evil. I saw it myself, and every time I saw this, I would tell my wife or my attorney, I don't believe they did this. They just broke into our house, and they painted a chemical on the seat. I was shocked every single time they did what they've always done. I find out, and because that's who they are and that's how they function. And like I said, it's a machine that will continue on regardless of who's the director of the CIA and regardless of who's in the White House, unless there's a concerted effort from the executive branch and the legislative branch to do something about it.
What is the real reason then that they took Maduro out? And we have seen people celebrate that. But what, in your opinion, is the real reason that they've actually done that?
Yeah, and that is a great question. I've done a couple programs on that because it's very important. Did we go in because the Venezuelans are suffering and their economy is in horrible shape, which it is? No. As a matter of fact, we created their economic collapse because we embargoed all their oil and put sanctions on them, and oil was their biggest commodity and drove them into where they are now. That's what the part that people are leaving out. What the administration went in for one thing, because China and Russia, Venezuela was starting to court China and Russia for its massive oil reserves to start selling them Venezuelan oil and probably the Chinese yuan or the Russian ruble. Now, what that threatens is the U.S. petrodollar, our global control of the petrodollar, and to lose that oil and to lose our petrodollar control of Venezuela would affect the U.S. dollar dramatically. So it just on my analysis, the administration went in to take that oil, and of course they took tankers and they took the oil and to save the petrodollar and the United States petrodollar dominance. And an indicator of that, which I think is unfortunate, Congress was not even advised that the agency in this operation was going in to do this operation until after it happened. But the oil executives were. The administration called the oil executives and said, we're going in to take over the oil. Just wanted to let you know that there's going to be a great opportunity. That was the call, not to Congress, not even to the intelligence committees before they went in. So that was a massive CIA operation. CIA 101 followed the same coup plans they always do with the lies and the pretext and then going in and removing the leader and putting the one in that they prefer. It's the same playbook, but it was for the oil. Venezuela has the largest oil reserve in the world, but it's crude. It's very thick crude oil, and it takes special refineries to refine it that the U.S. would have to build and restore in there, which they're now trying to get Exxon and others who is kind of backing off to go in and build those refineries. Anyway, to answer your question, Mark, that's I hate to make a simple statement, but with the CIA and its connection to Wall Street, it's always about oil or minerals or something that our country wants to take from that state in our view of national security, which is resources for the United States. And it's been the case coup after coup after coup after coup up until Venezuela.
Right. And then, of course, then there's the debate, and it'd be interesting to see your opinion of Hamas, Hezbollah, drug running in that region as well. That is a conversation that is going on, which I don't take lightly at all. And then, of course, as we've said, in regard to Venezuela, in 1998, I think they vote in Chavez, so they decide to go down the socialist road. And as you've said, American oil companies have already invested in the infrastructure before that. Then that gets all nationalized.
Right.
It's
the thing that the CIA despises, and this happened with Libya when they removed Muammar Gaddafi. He said, "We're not going to go by the U.S. dollar as our currency anymore. We're going to come up with our own Libyan, Middle Eastern currency and start standing on our own 2 feet." Well, boom, in goes the United States, and down goes Gaddafi through a third-party assassination being filmed by a U.S. drone. So any country that decides it wants to nationalize, Iran, the CIA went in and did the original coup in Iran because the president of Iran decided they were going to nationalize Iranian oil so that Iran would get the profits, not the United States. Well, the CIA went in there, staged a coup, which backfired. And what we have now is the Khomeini government because of that CIA coup. So that's what they do. Again, it's a machine. It's their playbook. It's how the CIA functions, regardless of who's in position in there, and regardless of who's in elected position. It will do that again and again and again, even though these coups keep failing. I don't know what's going to happen in Venezuela. I know that people are suffering badly, and we all want to see that turned around and their way of life improved. At this point, I don't know who's going to be installed as the president of Venezuela. That's still kind of hanging in the air. But I do want people to know that was a typical CIA coup operation, just right out of the playbook. And that's why I don't think that the CIA is going to be reformed, because it was just used to do another coup. I think John Ratcliffe was a good choice for the DCI. The first thing he did was cut 1,200 jobs, which were DEI jobs. And having seen the damage DEI did in there, I thought that was a good thing. And then it stopped. And even Ratcliffe, just like Mike Pompeo and James Woolsey said when they came out, the CIA, the machine, the heads of the directorates were doing operations in the CIA that not even the director of the CIA was aware of, because the machine keeps going. So that's why it remains dangerous, because it is an unconstitutional organization. It is a paramilitary organization. It is a para-economic organization, which fit into the Epstein money laundering and BCCI and all of that stuff. It is a huge machine. And granted, to take it on, as Bobby Kennedy Jr. has. Now, one thing I'll say about Bobby, not only do I think he's a fine man personally, he's got, I'll just say guts of righteousness. You could use another term, but where he's not afraid of what they'll do to him when he decries the CIA because it killed his uncle, and I think his father too. Sirhan Sirhan, I think, was an MK Ultra subject. Right. I think he does too. I don't want to speak for him, but it takes courage to stand up against this global juggernaut and its vast resources and the millions and billions that flow under the current that even U.S. businesses don't see, and Swiss banks, and on and on and on. It would take the kind of Congress we want, a courageous Congress that believes in the Constitution and demands to bring the CIA back under the Constitution, break it apart, put it back to the way Truman intended as an intelligence producing organization for the president and policymakers, not this covert global juggernaut that functions with complete impunity and no accountability whatsoever and does basically what it wants around the world. That's mind-boggling. But can it be reformed? Of course it can. But it takes courage, and it takes courage in Congress, especially, to take it on. And we all know how our Congress is right now. I wouldn't hold my breath on that one unless they're forced to do it. And there are several congressmen that have CIA clearances. In other words, they're controlled. There are other Congresses, at least 6 congressmen and senators that have stock in Lockheed Martin, the CIA's main contractor, basically the surveillance arm of the CIA that actually scans the U.S. mail when it comes through post offices. So there are congressmen that are so wrapped up in the CIA and that part of things that they're not going to do anything because of the money in their pocket and the lobbyists, or because they're afraid to wind up like Frank Church. Sadly, that's the case. That's what we're dealing with.
Going back to Truman, and there he vice president to Roosevelt. He then becomes president, and he didn't even know, he wasn't even briefed about the Manhattan Project. He didn't know. Yeah, right. There was so many. So it's really interesting to reflect on him as a character when he's catching up
Yes.
with all of this.
Good
And
point.
as you,
Yes.
yeah, and then as you, because I want to encourage people to read that period of history
Yeah.
from when Truman became president up until JFK, go back to Wallace, who thought he was going to become the vice president. And then again, I'm just going to bring this book. It was just here. I hadn't planned this, but this is a book, you know, basically, again, may God forgive us. And this is about Chiang Kai-shek, what was happening in China, Mao, and also then looking back at what Eisenhower, when he was talking about what was in the State Department, the foreign State Department, what he was dealing with. It's full of communists, etc. This whole thing, it's a fascinating period of history that at times people have just gone, no, 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 that's not true. Actually, it is. And I'm then, when Eisenhower went, warning about the military industrial complex, JFK comes in, and as you've just referred to him and also his brother, I want to smash this. I'm going to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces. And then they're not even explaining to him proper, they come to him about, well, this is our invasion of Cuba. This is how we're going to do it, bloody blah. And I'll just be quiet, but I just would really encourage people to look at that period history. Then, and I want to ask you about Epstein in a minute, let's not forget. Kevin, comments on the Trilateral Commission. Because, formed in 1973, we've got Zbigniew Brzezinski, all of this going on, the Trilateral Commission. And the reason why I'm saying it, because we're looking at the events of what's happening in Iran, where these dear, brave Persian people have been on the streets calling to get rid of Khomeini. A different one to the one that was in 1979. Let's just remind ourselves. He was in an apartment in France. The Shah has cancer. If you look at the pictures of what Iran was like in 1975, it would blow your mind. If my memory is correct as well, that in 1973, Frank Sinatra even gave a concert in Tehran, right? So let's just think culturally, all of that, but also the Trilateral Commission are involved. So Kevin, your thoughts again.
Well, Trilateral Commission is real. And you mentioned Zbigniew Brzezinski and his goal to basically essentially run the world using the petrodollar as the U.S.'s hegemony across the globe, which they were able to pull off. There have been CIA directors that were on the Trilateral Commission, and let's see, Steyer, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, of the Trilateral Commission had contacts with the CIA. And strangely enough, Jeffrey Epstein was on the Trilateral Commission. Now, you don't get on that commission unless you have got powerful connections and influence in regards to the intelligence apparatus or the geopolitical kind of secret apparatus that is organizing global affairs. It's super intellectual people that believe, obviously, as many in the upper CIA do, that they're smarter than the rest of us. Narcissistic personality types, of which I saw many, that just think that they're smarter than the average lemming down there, and they know how to control geopolitics. Hence, the Illuminati and the members of the Illuminati, which have been a mixed bag of very high level, wealthy, or intelligence connected people.
And that's why I say to people, look at this history, look at who was involved. Let's go to Epstein then. Kevin, there's been this 3.5 million bits of information dropped. I don't know how you go through that immediately. The administration, various names not redacted, the young girls, etc., have suffered at the hands of Epstein, people named. In your opinion, without it sounding another stupid question, who was Jeffrey Epstein, in your opinion?
Jeffrey Epstein, going all the way back to the Dalton School, and William Barr's dad, who was former OSS. And by the way, William Barr was recruited by the CIA right out of the university and has been affiliated with the CIA ever since. And he wound up over the Epstein case when Epstein was in prison and killed himself, and promoted the director of that prison to a regional
Sorry to
director.
interrupt. When you're talking about William Barr, you are talking about the was it the Attorney General in the first
Former Attorney
Trump
General of the United States.
in the
Yeah,
Trump administration, and it was
yes,
William Barr's dad that had a school. Is that
correct.
the connection that Epstein used to
Yeah,
teach at?
and yes, way back then, William Barr's dad brought Jeffrey Epstein into the Dalton School with no teaching or instructional or educational background whatsoever, and he wound up being a teacher instructor at the Dalton School, and that's where
Wow.
Epstein's journey began, was with intelligence way back then. Now, and I want to make it clear because there are some people out there saying, "Well, no, Epstein was not connected to the CIA and had no CIA connections whatsoever." I think some of that is a psyop, and I think some of it is ignorance. And I'll give you a few reasons why. The Epstein's trial, where he should have gone to jail for life for one of the most serious crimes in the United States, and that's human trafficking and rape of a minor. Instead, as we all know, he was given a light sentence. They put an ankle monitor on and let him go to and from his office. But when Alex Acosta, the Attorney General at the time, was asked, "Why did you let him off?" Now, Alan Dershowitz was involved, and he protected the names of all the co-conspirators that were involved with these young ladies, which is something that is worth noting. But Acosta's response was, "quote, I was told by the quote unquote higher ups that Epstein is intelligence and to leave it alone." Now, was he talking about higher ups in Israel? Although I think Epstein had clear Mossad connections. No, he was talking about higher ups in U.S. intelligence, i.e., the CIA. And the CIA with the BCCI Bank, which it was laundering money, had a child trafficking ring as one of its subdivisions. So Epstein bragged for a time himself, not that we want to add too much credibility to that he was working for the CIA, but in my view, and I'm convinced that Epstein was an access agent, a CIA access agent that they were using for their money laundering operations, a lot of their intelligence operations, in conjunction with Mossad, because Epstein was no doubt connected to Mossad, as Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a Mossad agent. So intelligence is all over this thing, and so is the CIA. And I just want to state that for the record, because they are trying to cover that up, and now, and it's so typical, it's almost funny. They're saying, well, we found out now that actually Epstein was a Russian agent. Oh, he was. Well, what these documents show is Epstein tried, I think, 4 times to get an audience with Putin and Russia to work with them, and was not able to do so ever. Although he was courted, he met with the CIA director then at the State Department and others easily. It's the same old CIA Russia screen where they will even create a Russian IP address to make it look like the Russians did something they're doing. So that's a sham. That Epstein was all KGB and he was a Russian agent. As a deflection away from the fact that Epstein was connected to the CIA and Mossad, running one of the most horrific human traffic rings in history, plus a massive, corrupt, criminal global money laundering operation of huge proportions. They want to take the obviously the attention off of that and put it on, oh, he was working for Russia, which they have done so many times. People should see through it by now, but the evidence for that is not there.
And we're reminded of the Steele dossier in the first Trump administration in regard to that, Kevin. So when we say, and we're, as Bible-believing Christians, believing that we are in the biggest spiritual battle of our lifetime and what we're seeing and this information coming out, what about the subject when you're talking about Epstein with child trafficking, this child trafficking ring? What about, and you mentioned the word Illuminati, and some people at that point might go, oh my goodness me, now you are a bunch of nut jobs. No, we're not. This is real. So where do you think, if at all, in regard to your thoughts on this, Epstein, which is bloodline family roots, right? Is this something that we can tie up with him when we look at these key families for years and years? Some people call it conspiratorial. is that subject? I don't know if I'm explaining this even well, but is that subject around the whole Epstein situation?
Yeah, I know a lot of people have been talking about that. That's not really my wheelhouse. I do
Mm,
know that, of course, Epstein was very close in working with the Rothschild family. There's
mm,
no question about that. But in terms of bloodlines coming down, that's kind of not my wheelhouse. And
mm,
that I know there's other people do a lot better job than I do than that. I look more at the intelligence connections and that sort of world. But yeah, that's about all I can comment on that. There was no question about the fact that he was connected to some royal and very wealthy family bloodlines in terms of his close interaction.
mm, mm. But where did he where did he come from? You know, as you said, he's there, the connection to Bill Barr, and that's another interesting case, isn't it? With
Yes.
Ruby Ridge, I believe, all of these things. And please, if anyone's listening, I'm not playing history games. I just want to encourage everyone to go down and learn this stuff, look at this stuff, and then decide for yourself, because it's really, really important that we step back and look at this. But where did he come from? You said, he was teaching then? How did he jump from there to finance, to doing what he was then doing, Kevin, in your opinion?
Groomed and funded as an intelligence access agent, given millions of dollars to establish this global network. Coming out of the Dalton School, of course, from OSS background, and then of course Bill Barr being the CIA after he graduated. Epstein was a nobody. He was a zero. He had no education. He was a dropout. He did some time as an investment banker, and from what I've read, he wasn't very good at it. And all of a sudden, he gets in the Dalton School, just out of the blue. This is what they do, and I understand the Dalton School was a spotting and assessing ground for this. They look at these kids and they say, okay, this one's groomable. This person doesn't really have any moral core,
Wow. Wow.
and we can start grooming them now early and start giving them money and giving them access and eventually giving them control of this network once they prove themselves that they'll do this sort of thing. And that's
Mm,
what they did. They groomed Epstein all the way up. And the entire time, William Barr was the CIA. And it was aggravating to me when Barr was Attorney General and Epstein was in prison in his cell, allegedly committing suicide. Bill Barr didn't do a thing about it. He didn't even call the prison regularly to see how Epstein was doing and check in on his safety. Never. The warden himself should have been on that case. This was a high profile case. He should have been down there checking on security regularly. He didn't either. And of course, we know the cameras didn't work. We know the missing piece of the video on the jail cell. And I mean, how much more do we need to realize that this was intentional operation connected to intelligence, and Bill Barr's in there with both muddy feet. This shocks the conscience. The magnitude of this thing and the involvement of our government officials in this massive, true conspiracy. And the reason why the government always likes to pick just one shooter, one assassin instead of one or two, because then it shuts down any talk about a legal conspiracy. And I taught the conspiracy in college. You got to have more than one person engaged in that. Well, you just shut that down when, oh, it was Osama bin Laden, we got him, we're done. Or it was this single kid shooter who went crazy and we got him. We're done. It's an old tactic. But he was groomed from way back then at Dalton School, which I think is the important fact. Taken up into, given money to start his network, which began to boom and expand. Got into William Maxwell and Mossad and drug running. Epstein was involved in Iran-Contra along with the CIA, and he was laundering and cleaning the planes, southeastern transport the CIA was using to transport guns and drugs. Epstein was running that, so the CIA knew about him, was using him then. The CIA has known about Epstein for years, and they have either looked the other way for this grotesque human trafficking operation that he has had, or they have supported it. Now, I know the CIA will look the other way from horrendous crimes if they think they're going to get some good intelligence. That's a fact. And they've protected several drug lords from arrest because they wanted to keep the drug lord and try to keep getting information from them. So they will do that. But the CIA knew about Epstein for years. And now there's 3 million documents left that they say, well, we're done. We're not going to release anymore for reasons of national security. Always an alarm bell. when they raise that term. Oh, well, we can't because of national security. Oh, can you define that? No, we can't because it's classified. No, if you can't define it, then you were using that to cover something up, pure and simple. What about these other Epstein documents are national security? Please tell us. The abuse of young girls as young as 14 years old, some case maybe babies, in some case possibly murder. And you're telling us that's national security and you can't release any more of the files because I think it's pretty clear they're being held by the CIA. People should be outraged by that.
The Dalton School, just to clarify that is Bill Barr's father's school that he ran.
Right. I think it was Donald Barr. Donald Barr actually wrote a book, strangely enough, a science fiction book about child molestation by aliens. I mean, just throw that in there just to add another layer of weirdness on this. But yeah, you can trace Epstein all the way back then from zero to villain as a grooming access agent, a groomed access agent.
Because that in this, to me, in the sort of public arena, people have touched on this, but they haven't, until me having the joy of talking to you, we haven't gone into sort of depth on that, because that's really, really important. The fallout that you're perfectly aware over here is that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince, sorry, I apologize. I love saying that. But he has been arrested, as you know, a couple of days ago. Peter Mandelson, who was in the Blair cabinet, who was appointed to be the British ambassador to Washington, who was there for 6 months. He has now been arrested, and as of recording this, and they are being arrested because of the accusation to them that in their roles for public service, they were passing information on that they were privy to people they should not have done. So the accusation is in regard to Mandelson with Epstein, in regard to the bank crisis of 2009-10.
Pretty serious. Yeah.
And it's really interesting when you bring up BCCI, which we've forgotten about, which is all those years ago. But also Andrew is then being accused of abusing his position as being a trade envoy and emissary.
Right.
And also both of them then having a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, or in Mandelson's case, then denying that he did, but he's carrying on. And there's been all these dreadful pictures of him with his underpants in Epstein apartment or whatever. And so they're following all these relationships. Kevin, as usual with you, it's just an incredible conversation, and thank you. And so sort of before we end, I just want you to, what are your concerns of what is going on in America? I am looking in, as you know, on a regular basis. You're looking in what is going on over here, which is a subject again for another day. But what are your, or maybe if you want to make a comment, what are your concerns about what is happening in America right now?
Yeah, well, I love this country, and I love the Constitution, and I love our constitutional form of government. And I want to stress to people to hold to that and stand for that and fight for that. Our current government is compromised, Mark, at the highest levels, badly compromised at the highest levels. Can we ever get it back? Well, yes, if we fight back and we stand together, we can. But our government is badly compromised, and as I've said in many programs, the CIA manipulates the Congress, it manipulates the president, and it manipulates the judiciary with the FISA and the state secrets privilege. So they're running the show. They're running our elected show, and it's worse than that, because now we have the blackmail aspect, and we're talking high-level figures and very wealthy people that have done these things. Some horrific things that could involve Satanism and sacrifices. And I don't say that lightly. Some of that is in some of these documents. So this is, as you and I know, as the scriptures say, spiritual wickedness in high places. It's dark and it's evil. But what cuts through that you and I know is the word of God and the name of Jesus Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit and the power of prayer. Number one, that's where we need to live and stay out, because that is the only thing that is going to defeat this kind of evil. I'll give you, actually wrap it up, a real quick example. When I was in the midst of the battle with the CIA and they were trying to destroy my finances and health insurance, my family was desperately ill. They were raising the interest rates on my car and blocking hardship loans, and loan officers were disappearing who'd approve. I mean, they were just going full bore. And I had a family to provide for. And I remember I was laying in bed one night, just exhausted from it all, because it was me against the agency alone. Yeah. And there were no whistleblower support groups, and I kind of don't think there really are anymore. But I was bombed. They're kind of window dressings, many of them. There a couple are good. Anyway, back on what I was saying. So I fell asleep that night, just exhausted and worn out, fighting this monster that was trying to literally destroy me personally. And I lifted my right hand up. And I just asked the Lord, I said, Lord, I can't do this anymore. I don't have any strength left. I'm done. Take my right hand, please, and help me and give me the strength to continue on. And I fell asleep like that. And eventually my arm dropped down. I got up the next day and I was like, why is the Lord putting me through this? I mean, this is horrific. I was a good officer, family man, just trying to do the right thing. I was down on the floor of that house praying every morning. I'm like, what is going on here? And I got really disillusioned, and I sat down and I said, okay, what's it all worth? And knowing better, I said, I grabbed my scripture and I said, I'm going to read a verse. And they opened right up to Isaiah 41, and I would recommend everybody read Isaiah chapter 41. It talks about the Lord will help you against your enemies. And the last verse says, for I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand, saying to you, behold, I will help you. It was 3 months later that George Tenet, who was the primary point that was attacking my family and me through he and Buzzy Krohn, George Tenet, the director of the CIA, was trying to destroy me and as well as my family. 3 months later, after that prayer, George Tenet resigns in shame from the CIA. I have it framed, the front page of the Washington Post. George Tenet resigns in shame in lieu of being fired for the false intelligence. And the Lord brought him down. He brought the chief defendant in my case to save my family down in shame. And I just want to say that because I want to encourage people of the power of prayer and the power of faith. And that's the power that we as believers have in the name of Jesus, and it's unstoppable.
Amen. I have to say to you, my friend, if I was in the same room, I'd just be grabbing your right hand, giving you a big hug and say, thank you so much for saying that.
Same here, brother.
Because that is, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the privileges of sitting down in this conversation with you, because I know some of your story. I've had that privilege to say, can you just pray? Can you pray? And I thank you for that, because it reminds us we are in the biggest spiritual battle of our lifetime. But the other thing is that we may be thousands of miles away, but we can connect while we have that technology, and we need to be doing Wonderful. That. And bless you for that, and I say to people, keep Kevin in your prayers. There's been so many brickbats, there's been so many there's been so many attacks on family, reputation. Is he the real deal? I mean, do me a favor. So it's awful. So please just remember Kevin, his family in your prayers. Kevin, again, just remind everyone where they can find your books, and also in the last sort of minute or so, what is coming up. You talked about this school that you're doing, which sounds fantastic. What is coming up for Kevin Shipp? What are you up to?
Well, a couple of things. I have a book out there right now on radical Islam and exposing radical Islam and its cultural jihad in the United Kingdom, where you are, and also here in America, in Texas and Tampa and other places where the same thing is happening.
Yep.
And I won't say the name yet until it's published, but it's going to show people exactly how this cultural jihad, civilization jihad is happened in the UK. And God bless you, brother, for still standing there with some other notable people. But it's happened in the UK. It's happening there now. It's starting to spread in the United States. So I have a book with a publisher about that right now. And then I have the CIA Masterclass on Patreon, where I'm going through the CIA. So everybody will be more of an expert on the CIA than some congressmen and senators. Wow. So when they have to answer for this what the CIA is and how it's gotten off track, exactly how they'll know, and that'll go on for the next 6 months. And then I have a third book, kind of on some of my exploits within the agency that they're trying to get me to write it, and they offered me a nice advance for it. But I learned as an author, when you take an advance, they own you. so
Yeah,
so I waived that. I'm working on that after I'm done with all this other stuff. So I'm maybe too busy. But I got a lot of things going on. I think the one that I'm enjoying the most is the CIA master class, because it's kind of a full class educating people on what the CIA is about, its power, and then what we can do about it.
What I know, my friend, is the fact that now, you're talking these facts, this stuff coming out. And of course, when we're talking about this stuff and what we've been through. It really does our mental health, the world of good, because then we're able to push back. And I hear that. So people go and buy Kevin's book. There's other stuff that is coming out. And as we were just talking before we came on air, our dear friend Trevor Loudon, he was in New York with a dear friend of mine, Marshall, came in to talk to people, to educate people.
Go see Trevor.
We need more people at that next event. But the fact that talking about the red-green axis, and I'm sure that you will be addressing all of these issues in your book, and then we need to make sure that Robert Spencer hears of this book as well as others. Kevin, I just want to thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to play us out. I'll say goodbye to you on the other side, but thank you so much.
All right. Sounds great, my friend. Thank you.